Nerds, welcome to another episode of Between Two Nerds, always with the Hex 2, where we talk with prominent guests about all aspects of the networking industry, from protocols old and new, to industry trends and drivers, to upcoming technologies, and as always, things you should know to further your career. Our show today is especially focused on that last thing. I'm Jeff Doyle, and with me, as always, is my friend and elegantly bearded colleague, Jeff Tansura. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Great to see you.
I'm still getting used to the brush there.
I think I'm already there. Been a year.
Joining us today,
yeah, you're following the right steps.
Joining us today is our friend Andy Lapteff. Andy, nice to see you.
Hello, fellow nerds. Thank you for having me. I am freshly bearded as well. This is my winter beard. I am enjoying it. I think it looks okay. It's not too gray yet. It's getting
we had a show a while back where we had a bunch of guests on, and everybody except one person had facial hair, and I think we were saying, yeah, you got to get out of here. You can't be on the show until you grow up.
Yeah, it's kind of stage in life. Right.
That's right. So, Andy, for those of you who might not be familiar with him, has a podcast of his own. Listened to a couple of them just this past week. In fact, The Art of Network Engineering. You can find it at artofnetworkengineering.com. Did I get that right, Andy?
You did, sir. And you pronounced my last name correctly, which is a miracle. So thank you for that.
Really?
Yeah.
I've known your name forever. So where this show came from is I was at AutoCon. Andy was at AutoCon. Jeff, you got to come to one of those shows one of these times. It's a lot of fun. But Andy did a presentation called "Confessions of a CLI Lifer." And Jeff and I have done a lot of presentations on, or a lot of shows around automation. And I thought, yeah, I got to get Andy on the show and talk about this because it was a really good story. And I have a feeling that we probably have a lot of people in the audience that are the same way, that, hey, I'm running my network via CLI. I'm a CLI jockey, through and through. And why the heck should I ever need anything else? And why should I ever learn anything else? And so I shamelessly stole your presentation title for the title of this show, since you're here. And so maybe that's a good side to talk about. I think you sort of subtitled it in your talk, if not in the slide. I don't really remember, about the human side of automation. And is that a good place to just kick off and hear a little bit about your story and what brought you around to being an automation convert?
Absolutely. The irony that I am now this automation guy getting asked to speak around different places about automation is really, it's sweet, because for folks who have followed my podcast over the years, I publicly railed against network automation for years. And I'll briefly explain, I guess, why I had such a, I was really repulsed by automation. And that's not a great, for anyone out there listening, that is not a great career strategy. Just full stop. Don't, even if you hate automation, don't say it. Because when you go to, yeah, right. When you go to apply to a job, this stuff is taking off, folks. So yes, I'll give you the very short version. Is I, as a young lad in college, I was trying to find my way, and computer science was one of my first majors. The first semester, they put me in calculus and C++ programming, neither of which I appear capable of understanding or getting a passing grade in. So I joked that I was weeded out early on in the computer science major. And I tried a couple different things and eventually wound up with a Bachelor of Communication, which I guess I used to beat up on that because I wanted a science-based degree at the time. And I mean, now I'm a product marketing manager in Nokia data center. So I guess it makes sense. Oh yes, I like to communicate. I'm a podcast guy. I create product marketing material. So, okay, communication makes sense in hindsight. But at the time I wanted to be, computer guy. And I thought to work in IT, you had to get a computer science major.
Mhm.
Years go by and as some of us do, we try a bunch of different things. We get lost. I was in sales, I was in marketing, and I kind of had a little life reboot in my 30s. And I thought, how can I love tech. Like I had to start over basically. And I'm like, God, I really wish I could get into tech. How could I do that? And I got a job at a local central office for a telco, Verizon, and pulling copper wires for POTS lines and DSLs. And I didn't know at the time I was working on a CLO architecture.
Something we have in common.
Yeah.
I started off as a phone man, climbing poles and crawling under houses and all of that. And
Well, so interestingly enough, and more irony, my mom was a service, what would they call them? Like a customer service rep at
service
Bell,
rep. Yep.
Bell Telephone at the time. And when I was graduating high school, she said, "Honey, I can get you a job as a lineman at Bell."
Yeah.
They started whatever it was. This is the 90s. It was good money. Like they started 50 grand and you'll be at six figures in 5 years. And looking back, because of how I know how the contracts went, like they would have never been able to get rid of me. I would have been retired by now. I would have been grandfathered in. And I told her, I'm smart. I'm going to college. Like the funny, ironic part is years later in my 30s, after my frame attendant job, I was there for a year. It was a summer hire that lasted a year. I wound up as a Comcast cable guy, again, climbing poles, in the ladders in the attics and crawl spaces, getting chased by dogs, stung by bees, bitten by spiders, for way less money.
I know all those
Bell
things.
Telephone would have started me in the 90s when I graduated high school. So, a lot of my decisions haven't been great in my career, but you're young, whatever. So, but that got me back into tech. And after time, I'm curious. I ask a lot of questions, and I was, working on the last mile of the Comcast network, right? But I maxed out at responsibility and pay, and I wanted more, and I didn't see a career progression there. I didn't really want to go into management for reasons, and all the questions I was asking, a couple guys that I worked with, some linemen had their CCNA, and they said, "Listen, the questions you ask, like I wanted to know what happened when I connected a modem to the network or when I provisioned a cable box. Like I knew there was a head end. I've been to them, but what happens beyond the D mark, right? Where I'm not responsible for." So long story short, I wound up in the Cisco NetAcad for 8 months on my own dime. It was 4 hours Friday nights, 4 hours Saturday mornings, and I studied for hours every day. And it was, about a year of school, and then it took me close to another year to pass that darn thing. I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any context. Everything I learned was brand new. Like as a cable guy, I learned a lot, like frequency division multiplexing and like quadrature amplitude modulation. I mean, I could spell them and kind of tell you what they meant, but the things you had to learn to become a network engineer just were deeper, broader, and it was very, very difficult for me. So I fought for a year and a half-ish and finally got my CCNA, got me a job in the Comcast NOC, National Break Fix. But again, this whole time when I came up in networking, the CLI was the job. It was the curriculum. It was, if you could typey away in the CLI and make the things do the stuff, that was the job. That was the career. And I was happy doing that. I wound up, I left the NOC for a job in fintech, which I was there for 6 years as a first and edge guy. Banks, right? They had a router at a bank with a fractional T1 that was connected to frame relay, right? Yep. This was what I came up in. But then we wound up in data center. They said, all right, no more edge. We're going to data center. So I learned a ton there. And we weren't automating anything. I wasn't automating. I believed that I couldn't. I believed I could not understand Python, basically, because that's what everybody was pushing in automation. I'm like, I've tried that. I can't do that. And I would dabble, right? Somebody say, oh, you should really check this thing out. And 5 minutes in, I'm like, no, I can't. What is this? This is C++ all over again. I'm out. So I was very resistant. And I just wanted to be in the CLI forever. That was my job. I will wrap this up because I know I'm going on and on, but basically 6 years in fintech. And then I met Mike Bouchon, who hired me at Juniper.
The life-changing Mike Bouchon. He's changed a lot of people's lives.
Hasn't he? What a guy. I'm so fortunate to call him a
We were
friend.
talking about before the show started. We were talking about our mutual friend Ananda Chatterjee,
Mhm.
whose book I've plugged on this show several times, and he worked for me for a while at Juniper when I was there, and I lost him to Mike when he went over to Nokia, and
Mike
it was
Stone.
like I did everything I could to keep that guy because he was my best engineer, one of my best engineers, and it was like, no, I want to be mentored by Mike, and it's like, yeah, I can't fight that.
And then there's
I
one of the
think I
smartest
met
guys I
Mike
ever met.
at Brocade, like
Mm.
Yeah,
about 20
yeah.
years ago.
That's where I actually knew Mike from my first stint at Juniper way back when, but I worked for him at Brocade for a while.
Yeah.
So I burned out in fintech and I wanted something else. And everybody, because of this podcast that I do, I kept meeting like a TME and then an SE. And I was meeting these different
Mhm.
roles, like network engineers who pivoted to vendors and made significantly more money than I made with no maintenance windows, no on call. And I thought that it was compelling that at a vendor that's properly positioned, you could have an impact on an industry, not just, at one company. So that
Yeah.
also interested me. So yeah, someone, a mutual friend told me to reach out to Mike, and Mike got on the phone with me and he said, listen, we're just going to have a conversation. At the end of that hour-long conversation, he started introducing me to people, and I got to work for Mike at Juniper. And again, more I worked with people. There was a gentleman I worked with there, Chris Marget, big
Oh, yeah.
coder. Yeah, Chris, he's a
I
great
know
guy.
Chris.
Chris and I were like, in a sense, oil and water, meaning he was coding everything, and
Mhm.
I didn't want anything to do with that for reasons that we already talked about, which was just based on my experience. And our brain creates these neural pathways based on experience. And for me, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I failed out of it, and I will never code. Chris and I used to go round and round. I'm all about the UI and look at this, and you can just press buttons. And he's like, how are you ever going to teach this to someone? How are you going to hand a UI to an operator? Are we going to have 800 pages of screenshots with arrows telling him what to click? So Chris created a Terraform provider, brilliant guy, right? Like infrastructure as code. So, but again, that was a lot of people at Juniper were doing things with code, and I was not. So I worked on things that had value, but it wasn't coding. The long and short of all this verbal detritus is I get laid off from Juniper very unceremoniously and unexpected after 2 years. And I hit the market, and the way I would frame it is the bad thing happened. Everywhere I interviewed seemed to require not like I didn't have to be a developer. Uh-oh. My camera just go out?
Your camera went up.
What the heck?
There you
And now
are.
it's back.
The keyword is developer.
It needed a break.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if we're gonna have problems, but we'll see. The everywhere I interviewed and all the job descriptions required basic automation, fundamental knowledge, Python and Git and Terraform and I'm like, oh my God. And I couldn't seem to get a job. And that went on and on. And the longer it went on, the worse it got. And I thought, wow, this is like, I thought, I thought I would have a career forever in network engineering just based on what I knew, which mostly was route switch and
Mhm.
about a decade of experience. And listen, I'm a communicator. I have this podcast. I know people. Like, I don't know. I thought I did all the things to stay employed. And it was about a year where I couldn't find a job until I embraced automation. I don't know whether we want to touch on the thing that changed my mind. It's one of those sensitive topics, but basically, I had a very low point emotionally during my year of unemployment, and I started to kind of feel like this was never going to turn around for me. How the hell am I ever going to get a job again? Everybody wants automation, and I can't do this. Air quotes for the folks listening, not watching the video. I thought it was beyond me, and I realized one day that if I was ever going to work again in networking, I was going to have to skill up. I can't ignore every requirement and every job description everywhere any longer. They all want automation, and
Yeah.
I started again. And this is a guy who's taken every Coursera course and every Python this and get that. And I've tried them and quit them all. But this time was different because I had to. I felt like so I started learning I started learning Python. Dwan Lightfoot had a class that used to be free that I started, and I was able to, with the NetMiko library, send a shover command with Python over to a router in my home lab and get a response. Now, I know that sounds silly to anyone who knows how to code, but for me, that broke decades of cognitive bias of I can't, right? Like all of a sudden I was doing something I knew I couldn't do. And fast forward to, I was doing study sessions and study streams, doing some Python stuff. And I wound up going to a couple networking field days where I covered Nokia. I met those folks, and one thing led to another. And now I am the data center network automation guy, product marketer at Nokia. So that's kind of the long and short of it. But yes, I put out a blog probably a year ago about my experience that I just described to you. Like, hey, I was a CLI lifer forever, and then I got laid off. And out of sheer desperation, I learned. And listen, I still can't really understand a Python script and explain it to you if I look at it. Like I am a infant on this journey. I think the important point to make for anyone listening who might be a CLI lifer is you just have to be on the journey. It's a never-ending journey. It's a continuum, and you just have to, because if you're going to go to interviews and tell them, I know nothing about this, I don't want to know, leave me alone.
Yeah.
You are separating yourself from the folks who are making an effort and trying. I think anyone hiring a network engineer today expects a minimum knowledge set, that you at least have a GitHub account, and you might have something in there, and you might have issued a Git command at one point, which I don't even remember now. It's not Git, it's like push whatever, but you have Python running somewhere in a home lab. Just basic stuff. Is there a book you're reading? Is there a course you're taking? Are you trying to improve yourself? Because when the AI stuff took off, with ChatGPT, right, and all the things you can do in there, like for me, that is gasoline on the automation's going to take our job fire. Like to me, like I thought automation was going to take my job, and if you look at the numbers, it's not, because the numbers are so dismal. But now that I see what you can do with AI and LLMs and machine learning, I'm starting to see tooling that can do my job better than me. Now, I'm thrilled to be a part of that and to be teaching people what I'm learning with some of these really cool products. But I also feel like I see the writing on the walls. Like, I don't know how much longer you'll be able to just be a route switch person with no programmatic foundational knowledge. And also, if you're resisting, like if you don't have an account on one of these LLMs, if you're not using this, if you're not you're not going to be able to get a job. So that was the whole thing at AutoCon, was like, listen, guys, please don't do what I did, because I almost didn't make it out of this problem I made for myself. I reached a very low point emotionally and was kind of ready to throw in the towel. And that broke the resistance in me. And now that I've embraced this, I have a job at a company I love with people that I love to work with, brilliant people. And now I'm learning these things, and I use LLMs all the time. And, there's so much technology at our hands that make it easier and easier to learn this stuff. But if you have cognitive biases in your brain that say you can't or you won't, you're just shutting yourself up. You're going to destroy your career as a network engineer. Like if you're a CLI lifer and you don't embrace any of this stuff, good luck in a couple years trying to get a job, because I have seen AI troubleshoot networks better than I can. And I don't love saying that out loud. I really don't. That was my job. That's what I did. That's what you paid me for. And now I can say this happened, and it does it all for me and shows me.
Yeah, I mean, it'll do a lot of it'll certainly do troubleshooting, depending on what the platform is and that sort of thing. But there is always that point where it's still got to come down to a complex enough problem that you need somebody that actually understands the routing and switching dynamics behind it before to fully resolve the problem. And that's so much of understanding where automation is just a tool, and it's just there to make your job as a network engineer easier. For me, my own introduction was somewhere the same way, CLI jockey from way back when, and a friend put together a Perl script for we were working on a client's network that was like 50 nodes or something, and needed to I couldn't even tell you what it was. Probably gather IP addresses on interfaces or something like that. And I was already planning on just log into each of these and pull them off. And he, took him like 10 minutes to whip out this Perl script, and it just went out, hit all the routers, pulled all the IP addresses, and that was my conversion moment right there. Of this is a huge labor saving tool, because
Were you able to
obviously
pick it up quickly, Jeff? Like,
no,
intuitive to you? Okay.
And this is kind of going along with what you were saying about same thing with Python. That you wouldn't consider yourself a Python expert. I wouldn't either. Never did really learn Perl, but I learned just enough about it. Bought a book on it to take the pieces and kind of cobble together what I needed for a tool to do what I, that was going to save me a bunch of busy work. And of course, automation now is so much more complex in terms of what we expect it to do and why we need it, because if I was talking about, your 50 node network, if you're running 1,000 nodes, you just really can't run that via CLI. When you start, you make a mistake in one place on a node, and which is kind of common. Everybody's heard that. That depending on the statistics you hear, anywhere from 60 to 80% of network outages are due to people fat fingering commands in the CLI, and and automation, if nothing else, is going to do the same thing over and over and over, and it's not going to make
At scale.
typographical mistakes.
No.
At scale, yeah.
I'll reflect on a couple of things. So I think it's extremely valuable what you said, right? There are many people who follow exactly kind of similar paths, right? And so being CLI knowledge work it's not of value in any possible way, right? It's been this way for quite some time, but for now it's kind of clear. I think what's interesting, and again, I stopped coding a long time ago. I did around 30 years ago a complete provisioning system. So hopefully I was capable of doing something. And so similarly to Jeff, I never had an urge to become proficient Python coder. I could go all the way with shell set. All the tooling was good enough, and it's still good enough. If I need anything, I do. I think what has changed, probably mostly last year, the emergence of tools like Cursor and such. I think we did full round to the point where you need to be able to clearly explain what you need, what you want, and understand the outcome. Writing code, and I'm not talking about highly complex distributed systems, this stuff will take a really long time to kind of learn to take over. Basic automation, basic scripts, Cursor's code is as good as it gets. I'm using Cursor 4 hours a day, sometimes more. All the architectural work that I do, and it's a lot of complex encoding that could involve BGP, could involve multicast, could involve GPUs talking to someone else. It writes Python framework for me, it does all the testing. I can actually validate that my really, really complex stuff works, right? So I think where I'm going with this, and I really like how you're outspoken, you clearly point out things, you know what you want, you know what to talk about, right? This is what's becoming huge value. If you can communicate proper to the machine, machine will do what you need. But you need to be efficient in communication, and you need to understand what you're getting. Again, there are still hallucinations. There's still stuff that basically anything that LLM does it kind of in a way trying to please you, right?
Yeah.
So being able to clearly explain what you need, drill down, and eventually understand what it does. And again, reading code is very different than writing code. I can read many different programming languages. I cannot write in most of them. I'm an old guy. I know C, C++, some degree, right? So, but being able to figure out it's bullshit or it's working, understand that it compiles, works together, it becomes more and more valuable. So you're bringing actually a lot of value of being not only the developer, but the product manager in a way, right? There are companies where product managers write code these days, right? So you're not only responsible for PRD requirements and everything else, you're also responsible for the code.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is where we are moving. As before CLI became obsolete, now kind of beginning level coding jobs becoming obsolete. And my kid, who is 21 and doing software engineering in college, he's worried.
Yeah.
And actually push him to use all the tooling you need, so you just become a better engineer. So where I'm going with it, if you feel, and yeah, I don't think coding is for everybody. I didn't enjoy it in my time. I did it because everybody else did, but I really enjoy architectural work and building stuff into it. Maybe use different tooling. We said CLI is gone. Probably writing basic script stuff is not very valuable anymore too, because machine can do it as good as middle level program. Being efficient in how you communicate, what you communicate, being able to see the larger picture, how stuff for not only configuring VLAN through automation, but how it works from service perspective, from end-to-end perspective. What do you do if it breaks? What do you do if you need to configure another one, 20 different ones? Your security requirement. If you are able to properly communicate it and let someone else to build the framework, potentially this is where the value is.
Well, I would say, there's still, that, whether it's Chat GPT or I know that in the coding world, Copilot is very popular right now, but you still have to understand it enough that you say, I need code that will do this, but you still have to understand the code to be able to read it through and go, did what it gave me. Can't manage English right now, but what it gave me, is that right? Or did it actually write proper code? And so it really just becomes a tool for a starting place. But you've got to still understand what it gave you, right?
And that's where I'm trying to get to. I want to be able to look at some code or a script and just have a basic understanding of what it's doing. I've tried vibe coding. So Jeff, you said something about being able to determine bullshit. Like, I was trying to do something not too long ago and I was vibe coding it, and it wasn't anything complicated, but 45 minutes of, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. Here's a bunch of code. Go deploy this and do it. And then I would do it and it wouldn't work. And then I'd have to go back and tell it the errors. And 45 minutes of this damn yes machine telling me, oh, we're almost there. No, that was close. And oh, now this will be good. Like, it's this weird gaslighting thing. I know that it's programmed, I think, to agree with us and tell us we're brilliant and be positive. It reminds me of the attention economy of social media. Like, it wants to keep you engaged, so it keeps kind of complimenting you but for me to spend 45 minutes of my life trying to pull 9 transcripts from a YouTube channel, which is what I was trying to do in Python, and spending almost an hour of my life fighting the LLM, it shouldn't be that hard. Now, if when it gave me the first script, I had a modicum of understanding to be able to see, is it bullshit? Is it okay? Right? Like, I just don't know. So I'm not even like anti-vibe coding, but what it gives me, I don't understand. So then I just throw it in a thing. And if it doesn't work, I'm in the way, right? I'm this person in the middle of the loop, like, ChatGPT, do a thing. Oh, it didn't work. This was the error. Try this. Didn't work. I I don't think that's super efficient. Like, so when I was in fintech, the first time I saw someone use automation and I kind of was like, oh, like an oh moment. We had a security audit and we had, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of switches. We had to change one config line, an SNMP community string. It wasn't up to whatever, and we had to change it everywhere because of standards. That would have taken me forever. Let's say it was 600 switches. I mean, the only way I know how to do it is the way we know how to do it. Like log into the jump box and go over to the thing and do a show run, pipe this, and then do it, and then check the log, make sure you didn't break anything over and over again. My buddy wrote a Python script in a couple hours, and we did it in 2 nights, just to be safe. So you can save so much time. And here's Jeff T, you made me think of it earlier when you were talking about coding. Like there's this chicken or egg problem, I think, at least I had, where I'm overworked as a network engineer. Our team is understaffed. I'm drowning in maintenance windows and change requests just to keep the lights on. Now, programmatic tooling, automation can help us be more efficient and do things. I could push one Python script and update 600 device SNMP community strings in a night instead of spending 6 months doing that. So I see the value, but for me to be in this cycle of I'm drowning, I'm always working, when the hell am I supposed to learn this? That was kind of that was the problem for me. And that also kind of validated my preconceived notions of like, well, this isn't for me, and I don't even have time, and work isn't going to give me the time. And like, I think we're getting to a point, again, this is just based on my experience, but losing a job after a decade of experience and a quote unquote thought leader in the industry with a successful podcast and all this stuff, not being able to get a job because I didn't know anything about automation. I just think that's a data point.
It is.
If you're out there listening to this, take that as a data point. You are not me, and you may not have the same experience. But then if you can pop up a level, and let's say you're a company who's hiring a networking person, there's Jeff T, who just humble bragged that he knows C++. I mean, this guy is a coder, right? And then you have me, who's like, hey, but I have a beard and a podcast and I worked in fintech, right? Like, okay, buddy, good for you. But Jeff T can do, again, that toil. He knows how to use the tooling to be much more efficient. Why would I ever buy 7 Andy's salaries when I could buy 1 Jeff salary who can do the work of 7 people with automation tooling? And I was always disconnected from the business in my career because I'm at the keyboard and I'm an engineer and I don't care and it doesn't matter. Just give me more changes to do in the network. But I guess working at vendors and different roles I've had and now what I'm doing, like I feel more, I've learned more about business in the past few years. And when you understand how capitalism works and how businesses make money and you have to reduce costs, automation, it's not an easy button, right? But it's such a intuitive way to reduce costs. If you can make your people more efficient, why wouldn't you? Which again, is just why I've been hammering this drum of like, please learn automation. Please embrace an LLM. Start using these. Because as you know, in interviews, this stuff's going to come up and they're going to be able to tell right away, Mr. Andy, anti-automation, anti-AI, it's going to take all our jobs and ruin humankind. Nobody's going to hire me, right? Or, hey, I know some Python. I'm reading this book. I met this guy. We did some study streams. I can show you something in GitHub. I use ChatGPT every day. Let me show you. I know how to use it in a networking context. I've done some troubleshooting with an LLM. I'm learning about MCP. That's it. That's a more interesting conversation with someone, right? Like this person is hungry. They're willing. They're learning. So you don't even have to be an expert, but to be completely, against the concept of being more efficient, which is really what the business hears. And that's what they see on your resume. And the only reason I've been making so much noise about it is because of the Network Automation Forum did that survey they do every year. And I forget what the number was. I heard John Capabianco recently say like 70%, but like I think 70% of folks or networks aren't automated at all or aren't automated much. And his argument, which I believe is going to be true, is those 70% of people aren't going to be upskilled. They're going to be replaced by AI and agents and LLMs. So, as has always been the case in technology and in networking, skill up, stay relevant, right? If you want to keep your job and do what you love, skill
Yeah.
up, stay relevant. And right now, I think it's basic programmatic stuff. Don't have to be a Pythonista. And I think we need to start embracing your LLM of choice. Pick one, right? And at least you're in the game, you're in the conversation. So that's what I keep saying.
That's a major point, because exactly to your story, becoming a proficient coder programmer, it's a barrier. It's a mental barrier, right? But the things are not binary. It's not like you cannot program, then you can program. There's long learning curve over the years. You become more efficient. You don't make mistakes you did before. You know how to manage code. You know how to properly store it, fix bugs and whatnot, right? So unless you do it on a daily basis, you are not becoming proficient. You learn stuff and you forget stuff. And the more wisdom you gather, the faster you forget, right? So
no, I've been looking around while we were having this conversation, trying to find the book. But you were saying you don't have to become I like your word, Pythonista. When I first it's been quite a few years ago now, said I really need to master Python. That was a mistake on my part. I went out, looked for what's the best book on Python. And I wound up with this monster. This is one of 2 volumes of this size. And it's, this is Learning Python. The other book is up there on my shelf.
Listen, that makes sense for the guy responsible for TCP/IP volumes 1 and 2. I can see why you chose the biggest, thickest Python book you could find.
Yeah, I mean, it's just stupid to me. The idea more information is better. But but it's like, you can see where my bookmark is. That's about as far as ever. And I would still someday love to, if I had absolutely nothing better to do over about a year, tackle these books and become a Python expert, but the
question how
reality,
much value it adds to what you know, right?
Yeah. I mean, you go through that and you pretty much can do whatever you want to do with Python. But then there's books like this. My friend Eric Chow, I think Andy, you probably know him. He's always at AutoCon. But one of my favorite books, that it's just, what do you need to know about Python to run a network? And easy to get through. But and you could do it a lot simpler than that. I mean, we've been talking about LLMs and using AI to write a Python code for you. Part of that can be a learning process. Write this section of code and maybe just use that for your lab. Show me how to or create some code that will do whatever X. Gather IP addresses or whatever. And
another important thing is probably that thanks to last year developments, we got from black box behavior to reasoning. So you could be as detailed as, let's reason about every line of code you wrote, explain every line why, what are the alternatives. It is becoming your sparring partner in a way, right?
Yeah.
Make it explain to you why, make it explain to you how, and again, it will happily please you. It's in the core of training of the model.
And it's surprising how much detail you can get and how good
it's
of a
much
response
friendlier way to learn what particular things does, rather than trying to read dry book that someone who's been coding for 30 years wrote and expect everybody to understand it just by reading it, right? It's not for everybody.
And that's why I love LLMs, Jeff. You could just use it as a teacher, right? Like, teach me. I was thinking as you were talking, we have so many different flavors of ice cream because some people like chocolate, some people like strawberry, some people like vanilla. And as you're showing your Python books, I probably have them all next to me here. And I like parts of some of them and not parts of other ones. But even just the value of, what do I pay? $20 a month for ChatGPT, and I can just say, hey, teach me Python. I know nothing. And then just have an ongoing conversation where the context is always there. And it's just such a powerful tool. Now, the crazy tinfoil hat Andy from a year or two ago would have said, but that's terrible for teachers and it's terrible for authors. And now people are using the LLMs instead of so, that used to be my main pushback on automation. They're going to take our jobs and I'm not a coder. And then, later with AI, well, this is bad. It's displacing things. But then if I reframe it, I could buy 7 Python books and try to fight through all of them to get what I want. or just talk in natural language to a tool with all the information at my disposal.
The most important part, what is your goal is not to become a programmer. Your goal is to be able to program, to automate a network programmatically.
Yep.
This is your goal. And you could use tools such as LLM or something that can directly work with you on achieving this goal rather than learning stuff, 80% of which is absolutely irrelevant to what you need.
Yeah. You know, you hear a lot of like find a use case, right? And
efficiency is very important, especially given limited time. You need to do your daily job. You have 1-2 hours between children and all other stuff that you do. Make it efficient. You're driving your car. You already have voice interaction. Talk to the thing. It's amazing where you get with it, right? It's just be efficient and follow the goals, not the abstraction. I need to become a programmer.
And it doesn't have to be a network.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be like if you want to have fun. So every night I come home, I have to go on my phone and click a bunch of different buttons. First, I have to turn off the alarm. Then I have to turn up the heater. Then I have to open the garage door. And my buddy Jeff was telling me, you could automate all that. Yeah. And this guy writes scripts and then he pulls it into some iPhone app or something. But so something fun I would like to do, because yes, you could be more efficient in your networking and you could write configs faster. And I know there's a lot of other cool stuff that you can do with intent and checking. There's a lot of really great tooling out there, but even just in a non-networking context, I want to just be able to, as I'm driving home, say something out loud in natural language to, I can't say it now because it's sitting here on my desk and it'll start talking to me, but hey, somebody, I'm on my way home, and have that kick off a Python script that I figured out and wrote that turns off my alarm, turns up my heater, and opens my garage door, which is all connected, in the smart home network. Because right now I'm telling you that I love automation and it is great and we all need to do it, but I'm still doing so many things in my everyday life manually that I could be automating. Again, it comes down to time, right? I need to sit down and figure that out. I did install something on my home Linux server, which I think is going to be the brains of, my home automation stuff. But then I get distracted and I see a squirrel and go somewhere else. But,
yeah, but it's all extensible knowledge too. I mean, you're learning Python, doing something fun, making things happen in your house, just because it's cool and fun. And it's like, it's almost a trivial leap from that to making something interesting and fun happen in your network.
Right.
And
yeah.
If you look at interview, unless it's kind of stupidity, no one is going to ask you, can you write 100 lines of Python code, right? It's a meaningless question. They ask you can you automate, how you automate. It has nothing to do with your coding skills as such. You need to understand the process. And this is where you get hired or not hired.
Yeah.
At the end, right? If you can explain the semantics.
I'm sorry. That's something Bouchang, I think, taught me, or I heard him say once, like, what's the question behind the question? So if someone's asking if you know some basic automation, I think what they really might be asking is, how efficient are you at your job, right? And some of it is very easy. Ansible is very easy. I like Ansible because when I thought Python was beyond me, I could figure out a playbook and a config file and, stumble along and get it to work. And I could generate endless configs on endless devices just using that very simple tooling. So that's the question, right? If someone says, well, what do you know about automation? They really want to know, do I have to hire 10 of you because you do it the old school slow way? Or can I hire maybe 1 or 2 of you that are 10x efficient because you're using the the tooling that we have available at our disposal? I mean, that's really the question that I think you have to think about as a network engineer who needs a job. Are you efficient?
Like you said, or like Mike said, the question behind the question is, well, what do you mean by automation? Do you mean, can I whip out a Perl script that makes something that would have taken me 3 hours to do, can be done in 10 minutes? Or am I managing this large network on a day-to-day basis and getting insights into troubleshooting and all that sort of thing? Jeff and I, when we worked at the same company, we were working for an automator, The product was automation, and one of our big messages was you can't look at the infrastructure. In our case, it was always data center infrastructure. So you can't look at the infrastructure as a collection of nodes. It's a holistic entity and has to be managed as one entity. And that's such a huge philosophy of automation at scale.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite of everything that was taught when I went through Cisco Netacad. So that's the cultural component that we haven't even touched on. I know we're alluding to it, but I don't think I was taught system thinking. I think I was taught node by node.
You stole the word out of my mouth. System thinking is the key here, right? As you evolve, your value is not writing 30 lines of Python code. Your value is to understand end-to-end. System thinking is fundamental here. How you achieve it is really secondary. And again, with the evolution of Cursor, Copilots, and all the tooling, it's becoming less and less valuable. This stuff eventually figures
This is an embarrassing question to ask out loud, especially on a podcast. But I mean, how would one even begin to learn system thinking? I mean, I was curious and I wanted to learn all the different things in my data center and how they work. So I had a home server, and then I learned Linux, and then but how would one even learn system thinking, right? Is it just a mindset? Is it technology you have to learn? I don't have an answer.
It's a mindset because there's a whole bunch of technologies, right? The very, very common question on interviews, when you type a URL, what happens? So you need to explain DNS, comes back, IP address, how it's routed, and so forth, right? So this is end-to-end system thinking, from typing something, so intent, to actually seeing the page. And I think similar thinking is applicable to pretty much everything. If you understand the end-to-end, which is really the core of technology, the rest becomes semantical and it's learnable. Moreover, if technology is something that excites you, as it excites me and Jeff, for example, right? We are excited by technology, like kids. You enjoy what you are doing. When you enjoy what you are doing, your brain will build all the neural pathways needed. It will do all the work for you to remember it. If you just learn, again, you read a dry book about Python, I actually don't know anyone who can learn from this kind of book. Right? Your brain needs to have some incentive to remember it. And when you bring this in context of what you're enjoying and you're doing, not only because you need salary, but you actually like it, I think things look very different.
And it has to be done repetitively too. In that sense, Python really does need to be thought of as a language. And if you learn any language, you've got to use it every single day, or you're going to forget. And I find that with that book, I had the bookmark not very far into it. I'll set it down for a month because I'm busy, and then pick it back up, and it's like I don't remember all the stuff I read, and I have to start back over. But if you're not sitting down using what you've learned every day, I'm pointing back there. My lab is there's not anything left of it yet. I'm making changes back there, but just getting into your own lab every day and writing something that makes something happen in your lab via Python, or we haven't even talked about Go, but in Go if you want to.
It really doesn't matter what language you use. You're not looking at high performance code that's optimized, that manages memory. It's scripted then. But to put in kind of time perspective, when I did my CCIE 20 years ago or so, I finished by 1. I was so efficient by typing fast and doing things fast. I was just done in 3 hours, 3.5 hours, right? Back then it was huge value. Then eventually automation happens, kind of basic automation. We are looking maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I'm not sure I translate, but in land of people who cannot see, guy with one eye is the king, right? So regular network engineer couldn't code, it's a given, right? 95% of them. The people who could write a couple of lines of Python, not Python, but then probably more of a shell scripts, and actually Perl was quite popular at some point in time. What a perverse language, by the way. right? So suddenly it became a deal. But again, I think getting to where we are now, having understanding of what you're trying to achieve, how is becoming less interesting, less valuable. It's really to understand what is it, and being able to clearly articulate to your manager, to your colleague, to LLM, what you're trying to do. It's potentially 80% of the job.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. This has sort of been a wide-ranging, really fun discussion.
Yeah.
And so, Andy, I want to leave last word with you, in terms of, out of all of this, for anybody that, if we've convinced anybody out there that they need to start learning automation, they need to get their need to start building some chops there. What are your recommendations? You've sort of said it all through this, but just summarizing, where do you start?
I I think the first thing I would say is don't wait for the bad thing to happen. For me, it was a layoff. So if you
Yeah.
can, it's much easier. What's the cliche? It's much easier to look for a job when you have a job, right?
Yeah.
People can smell desperation. It's hard to fake confidence. So don't wait for a layoff. Don't wait for these LLMs to get so good that they summarily dismiss 70% of us from the industry because they don't need us anymore. So it's always the same advice. I think skill up. We're always going to need people. And I also think we're always going to need CLI. When you call the TAC with a bad problem, guess what they do? They go into the CLI and they do their hidden commands and they do some magic. So I don't think people or the CLI necessarily go away, but I think our interface to those systems, like you said, it has changed. And from what I've seen from a lot of the modern tooling, which is, I think there's less resistance between you and the system, and the natural language capabilities make it much more accessible to do things and interact with systems without having to know 6 or 7 different languages or arcane syntax. So over the years, I've always tried to have what would I tell someone? Because I get people who will DM me or send me a message like, hey, I heard a thing and I saw your show and I want to get into networking. What should I do? The advice I gave 10 years ago is different than the advice I gave 5 years ago, which now the rate of change, like I don't even know if my advice is, how long it will be good, or because the rate of change is just accelerated in tech, I think, and in everything. But I mean, I think you need to learn systems, to Jeff T's point. Again, I don't know how to tell someone to learn systems, but I think you need to learn some type of programmatic thinking. Python seems to be the easiest, most English language syntaxy. When you said Go earlier, I know you made my friend Chris Marget happy, because when I told him I wanted to learn Python, he yelled at me for a week about just learn Golang and it's better for all these reasons. I'm like, buddy, they said Python's easier. Stop it. But I would recommend, try to find a Python course that you don't hate. I know it's a weird way to put it, but I've taken a lot and I've really not enjoyed a lot of them, whether it's Jeff Doyle's 8,000 page Python 2-volume book that he has. What I've been
I don't recommend that.
What I've been enjoying is a much thinner Python crash course. And again, it's just basic fundamental, knowledge that I'm trying to get in my head. But I would learn Python. I would learn Linux. And
well, the one piece I would add to that is maybe not even say I'll learn Python, but I'll learn what I need to know about Python to make my network work.
There you go.
Yeah. And listen, this isn't what I should say at this point as we're wrapping up, but just know that the rabbit hole never ends, and that's okay, because it's not just Python. Then you got to know Get, and then you got to then it keeps going. But if you love tech like we do, and you're curious and you're open to it, and you have a measured approach, like you don't have to be an expert in all the things, just start touching them. So Python is a good entry point. So I would say learn Python, learn Linux, and if you have to get familiar with an LLM, with AI, with a natural language model. Pick one. To your point, if you're a coder, what is it? Copilot? Is that what everybody has plugged into VS Code? And that's
yeah,
the big.
yeah, that seems to be, at least in my experience.
I would recommend Cursor above anything else, but that's personal choice.
What was it? Coursera? Yeah, Coursera's
Cursor.
Oh, okay, yeah. I just learned at my last network field day about what is it? TF forums, like levels of autonomy and like autonomous networks. I mean, my brain exploded a couple months ago when I realized that there's people working on, like, the goal is autonomous networks. Like, what? I mean, to me, that means they don't need me, right? So just if you can get a broader view of the world, right? And business and capitalism, and like, just look at what's happening and try to keep your skills relevant so that you can participate in what's happening. Because not too long ago, I was a dinosaur thinking like a dinosaur, and I had my eyes closed and my ears covered, and I didn't want to hear any of it because it was easier for me just to believe what I believed. And again, disruption changed my mind, right? So just stay skilled up is the net, I think.
Yeah, I'm a skeptic about autonomous networks. That term has been around for a long time. Autonomous networks, self-driving networks, or self-healing networks. I think there always has to be a knowledgeable person behind that.
Have you been in a self-driving car? Because I don't disagree with what you're saying, but a year ago I would have been like, you're nuts, I'll never get in one of them. I took a Waymo. I wish I could buy one. I would never drive again. It was so amazing. Like, autonomous driving, man. I'm a big fan.
My car drives 80% of the time alone. I'm just
amazing, right? But if you said
I've never been in one. I was in San Francisco last week, and they've got Waymo there, and I think Waymo is coming to Denver. It seems like I read that in the news.
I think I would really like to add something on top of this, and I think we do it almost every show. If you know automation but nothing about network, you're a plumber. It's a great paying job, and some might enjoy it. You want to kind of progress in food chain, learn protocols, learn not only how to connect stuff, but how it interacts with each other. Again, system thinking. It's not just connecting fibers. There is layer 2, that's probably less relevant now, but then there's layer 3 and routing on top, and some application-related stuff. And this is how food chain, it really looks like triangle, right? Try to go up. It's, again, some people really enjoy plumbing or doing electricity, right? It's a great paying job, and you'll always have a job. However, if you want to go higher, learn other stuff, make sure you understand the system vertically, from application layer up to potentially back to optical, how you interconnect cable, and this kind of stuff. So learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that applies for all of us in this industry. If you're not a student, you're going to stagnate.
Yep.
Well, Andy, it was great. We actually we've got like 2 minutes left here. Oh yeah, there's the timer over here on my screen. I've been looking at the clock on my. But thank you so much for joining us. I know that. It was a little bit of a challenge getting you scheduled for this show. We've sort of been going back and forth since November. I'm pretty sure, like, the week after AutoCon, I was saying, "Hey, I want you to join our show," and all our schedules, especially around the holidays, were sort of wild, and it took a little while to get here, but here we are, and this has been a great show. Thank you so much. I do want to mention one more time Andy's podcast. The art of networkengineering.com. Did I get it right this time again? And for everybody listening, it's a great podcast, and worth your time. Andy, thanks a lot. Jeff?
Thanks, Andy. It was really great. I can't thank you enough. And I think bringing your personal story into this, make it even more powerful story. I think to our listeners, it's an amazingly useful conversation that, it's about life. It's not technology. And thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Had a great time.